Andrea Etherington, and I'm chair of Purbeck Film Festival.
And can you tell me the story of how the Purbeck Film Festival came about?
The Purbeck Film Festival came about 23 years ago. We're talking in 2019 now, so 23 years ago, as a celebration, I think, of 100 years of the start of cinema. And it was a number of local people, I was not one of them, who involved the Mowlam, the Rex in Wareham, and one or two other venues. Relatively small, but obviously successful enough to keep it going year after year.
And how have you built it up?
Now, and in recent years, people come to us and ask us if they can be part of the festival, which is wonderful. So we're not looking around for venues. In fact, we don't do that at all. People often come to us and say, you know, we're such and such a village hall, please could we be part of the festival? Building it up in terms of numbers in each venue is, I think, considerably word of mouth. It's the fact that people have a lovely time on an evening and tell their friends, you know, this is great, have you thought about doing this, or why don't we go to another one, and so on. So we've built up, and now we are, you may be about to ask me this, so I apologise if you are, about an audience of about 7,000 a year, but that includes a few in-year, outside of the 2 weeks of the festival, a few in-year events.
So what other events do you do?
We do open-air screenings at Corfe Castle, open-air screenings at Studland Beach, with the National Trust. We have done open-air screenings in Noath Fort in Weymouth. We've done them in Home for Gardens this year, in the beautiful theatre that they've sculpted in the grass near the gardens, and we're hoping we'll do more with them. We had plans to have an open air but under a marquee screening on the pier, which might happen, we hope, next year. We've done them on the end of Peveril Point in Swanage, which is challenging for the wind and other things. And people ask us, you know, could you put on a film for us? For example, the Granary Restaurant in Wareham, we've done probably a dozen screenings on their roof.
Well, that does beg the question, why is it that when you can watch films on your phone, why come out to venues when you can watch it at home?
I think all the research shows that people really get extra enjoyment from being in a communal experience, even if they're on their own sitting in a cinema. And certainly during our festival, the amount of conversation and encounters that go on at the events is enormous.
And do you think the venues add something to the film?
Definitely. I don't know about to the film, but to the experience. So, for example, tonight I'm at Creech Grange, which is a 16th century mansion that has a quirky little 20-seater cinema. We show in small pubs like the Square and Compass, which is a very eccentric and lovely venue. And some of them are village halls, but some of them are hotels or restaurants. 29029 Nepalese restaurant, we always show a Nepalese film, and so on. Definitely adds to the experience. And people talk to each other and enjoy the ambience of it more than if they were in, say, dare I say, a multiplex.
So it adds to the atmosphere?
No doubt, yeah.
And so what for you makes the Purbeck Film Festival special?
I think we have at least two features that are very particular to us. One is we are the largest rural film festival, except for Borderlines in Herefordshire, and the longest running rural film festival. So the span of coverage geographically is quite extensive, and 30-something venues is unusual. Bath Film Festival, which is quite near us, and which has a smaller audience than us, significantly smaller, only has about 4 or 5 venues. So the first thing is then that it stays very rural, very much responding to the community, even though we have some over in the conurbation, like the Jazz Cafe, Branksome Church, Red Rooster, there's a restaurant just on the fringes of the conurbation that face Purbeck, if you like. And when the festival started, we did 2 weeks in Bournemouth University, and we've always screened at the Lighthouse. So we're a little bit larger than geographic Purbeck, but with very rural and communal roots. The second thing is, we are not a film festival that sells film rights to distributors. We're not Sheffield or Edinburgh or London or any of those film festivals that serve the industry. Leaves us free to be able to show classic films, older films. We showed Buster Keaton's The General on the first night of the film festival this year. And I know other film festivals often say to us, you're very lucky that you've got the freedom not just to be showing the most recent films.
And it really does add to the community.
According to the evaluations, well, you would give a great deal of money to get the evaluations that we get, for free, obviously, saying, you know, we look forward to this all year. This 2 weeks is one of the highlights of our year. We get to meet other people. In the shorts competition, for example, we get to discuss film and what makes a successful film with people we haven't met before, and so on.
I know Purbeck Film Festival is across the region, etc., but obviously today we're here in Swanage.
Yep.
And what do you think, sort of just slightly different tack, but what do you think makes Swanage special?
I mean, Swanage is a stunningly beautiful place, and has had a long experience with artists and creative activity. Sometimes we forget that, you know, Augustus John and Paul Nash and people like that who have spent time painting, visiting this area, and of course authors like Thomas Hardy and so on. So it's special geographically, it's special aesthetically, and it's special in terms of its cultural contacts.
And it's nice to draw people down to Swanage to see films.
About our research over the last 10, 15 years shows that something like 10 to 15% of our audience come from elsewhere. Sometimes, but I won't claim exclusively, because of the film festival. Some even from Germany. We had a couple of families, so anecdotally, who've come over especially. And we now are collecting postcodes, so if and when we have time, we will be able to analyse exactly where everybody comes from. About 30 to 40% come from quite a wide region beyond Swanage and beyond Wareham. So it does put the place on the map. It, I think, helps to enhance the reputation of the area.
And what are your thoughts for the future with the film festival? What would you like to see happen?
I think our problem is that it would be very easy for us to get bigger and bigger, and that's what we're often asked if we would do fairly major things, like work with the coastal bids to put in Bournemouth and Poole and so on. The problem is we only have 1.4 paid person, and we must have 40 to 50 volunteers, thousands and thousands of volunteer hours. And I don't think we can put any more strain on those people. And I think managing a larger number could be really difficult. So that is our, if you like, to me, it's at the limit of our parameters, as it were, in terms of what we can do in terms of growth. For the future, always, since I've been chair, what I've tried to do is make it an enjoyable experience to volunteer, a service to the community in addition to the cultural life of the area, a major contribution to the cultural life of the area. I mean, films from 20 odd countries, whereas the access that most people in Dorset get to what the BFI call beyond the mainstream films, specialised film, classic film, art house film, foreign language film, etc. That is pretty poor here in this area, so we hope we're contributing to that. And 10 years ago, when the Purbeck Film Festival Trust bought the Rex Cinema, that also made a significant impact on those things.
Is there a film that you would like to bring to the festival?
I bring loads of films every year, in the sense that all of us say, you know, I'd love to see this. The other day, I was talking to a young Polish girl who was working on a workshop in this building, in the Durlston Castle, and she reminded me that the Polish film school and the Vajda trilogy and things like that, I'd love to bring those back. I think they've been shown maybe 15 years ago. I love French and Italian film. I would show almost anything. We showed the first two of a Pagnol trilogy, and the third one hasn't yet been made. If it's made, I feel we owe it to the audience to let them finish that story. But there'll be films that haven't yet been made, that I haven't heard of, that will be very exciting.
My name is Woody Harding. I coordinate the programme with the help of, obviously, with others.
And how do you go about coordinating the programme?
That's quite a complex answer, actually. Half of the programme are venues in village halls, and we draw up a list of 4 or 5 pages, and they select the films from those pages, if they wish to. They don't always have to. The other half of it is based upon Lighthouse, Durlston Castle, and of course the Rex, which is the centre of the festival, the heart of the festival. In all, there'll be about 35 films in those 3, and say 35 in the others. 70 films, 75 films in all. How we select the films for the Rex and the Lighthouse and the Durlston Castle is quite complex, because it involves a lot of people, and it involves a lot of time going to the previews, the independent cinema office previews, which are held 5 or 6 times a year around the country. We go to 2 of them, and from that we see 4 films a day for 3 days. About 5 or 6 people do that, and from that we get the core of the festival. The one in Lewis, which was in June, created the core for the Lighthouse, and 1 or 2 films for the Rex. Andrew and I go to the South Bank, and we watch those films, and it creates another set of films. So we get a sort of centre, and then we build around that. Suggestions come from all over the place, really. I personally read lots of film magazines and cross-reference reviewers to get. What I'm particularly interested in is an audience rating. If the audience rating falls below a certain figure, I start to doubt the worth of the film, because we have to think about the audience. It's all very well putting on a film festival with art house films and commercial films and artistic, all sorts of things, classic films. But if the audience are not going to pick it up, then what's the point? Because you have to balance money and artistic pleasure as well.
And what do you think makes a good mix?
It's a combination of foreign language. We have to have a number of foreign language films. It might vary between 15 and 22, 23, because the British Film Institute like that, because foreign language films it's difficult to show them in this country. British independent films as well. We want to put some commercial films in. We had one last night, The Sicilian Clan, made by the French, a very famous film director of France, quite old, but it's a classic commercial film, and it went down a bomb with 3 top stars. We show archive film. We show films of all types. As long as there's variety, it's the variety which is crucial, because you're dealing with different constituencies for different films.
And what do you particularly like? What sort of films do you like?
That's an interesting question. My favourite film is Les Enfants du Paradis, which we've shown twice to full houses. It's everybody. I think it's a lot of people's favourite. But the films that I like are, in some way, sometimes I like non-plot films. Films where there's lots of conversations between people, things going on, but there's not a straightforward plot line. I suppose they're my favourites, really.
And it has to be inspiring, maybe.
Yeah, it inspires. It inspires psychologically, philosophically, aesthetically. Yes, I think films are a very interesting art form, which in Britain is less valued than, say, in France.